Hi, I'm Chris. This is AFA, Addy Family Adventures, and today we are going to learn about the history of daylight saving time. So come with me as we learn about this change in time. Alright, so daylight saving time. What is daylight saving time? Daylight saving time is a seasonal time change measure where clocks are set ahead of standard time during part of the year, usually by 1 hour. As daylight saving time starts, the sun rises and sets later on the clock than the day before. Today, about 40% of countries worldwide use it to make better use of daylight and to conserve energy. First used in Canada in 1908, while Germany and Austria were the first countries to use daylight saving time in 1960, it is a little known fact that a few hundred Canadians beat the German Empire by 8 years. On July 1st, 1908, the residents of Port Arthur, Ontario, today's Thunder Bay, turned their clocks forward by 1 hour to start the world's first daylight saving time period. Other locations in Canada soon followed suit. On April 23rd, 1914. Regina and Saskatchewan implemented daylight saving time. The cities of Winnipeg and Brandon in Manitoba did so on April 24th, 1916. According to the April 3rd, 1916 edition of the Manitoba Free Press, daylight saving time in Regina proved so popular that by law now brings it into effect automatically. Germany popularized daylight savings time. However, the idea did not catch on globally until Germany introduced daylight savings time in 1916. Clocks in the German Empire and its ally Austria were turned ahead by 1 hour on April 30th, 1916, 2 years into World War I. The rationale was to minimize use of the artificial lighting. The artificial lighting to save fuel for the war effort. So if you didn't notice, I actually had a light go out. So within a few weeks, the idea was followed by the United Kingdom, France, and many other countries. Most of them reverted to standard time after World War I, and it wasn't until the next World War that daylight saving time made its return in most of Europe. Who invented daylight saving time? If you think daylight saving time is a good idea, thank New Zealand scientist George Vernon Hudson and British builder William Willett. In 1895, Hudson presented a paper to the Wellington Philosophical Society proposing a 2-hour shift forward in October and a 2-hour shift back in March. There was interest in the idea, but it was never followed through. In 1905, independently from Hudson, British builder William Willett suggested setting the clock ahead 20 minutes on each of the 4 Sundays in April and switching them back by the same amount on each of the 4 Sundays in September, a total of 8 times switches per year. First daylight savings bill. Willett's daylight savings plan caught the attention of the British Member of Parliament Robert Pearce, who introduced a bill to the House of Commons in February 1908. The first daylight saving bill was drafted in 1909, presented to Parliament several times, and examined by a select committee. However, the idea was opposed by many, especially farmers, so the bill was never made into law. Willett died in 1915, the year before the United Kingdom started using daylight saving time in May 1916. It is not known if he was aware that his idea had become a reality 7 years prior to his death in a small town in Ontario. Benjamin Franklin, the father of daylight saving time. Many sources also credit Benjamin Franklin with being the first to suggest the seasonal time change. However, the idea voiced by the American investors and politicians in 1784 can hardly be described as a fundamental for the development of modern daylight savings time. After all, it did not even involve turning the clocks. In a letter to the editor of the Journal of Paris, which was entitled An Economical Project for the Diminishing the Cost of Light, Franklin suggested that Parisians could economize candle usage by getting people out of bed earlier in the morning. What's more, Franklin meant it as a joke. An ancient idea, although modern daylight savings time has only been used for about 100 years, ancient civilizations are known to have engaged in comparable practices thousands of years ago. For example, the Roman water clocks used different scales for different months of the year to adjust the daily schedule to the solar time. Daylight savings time is now used in over 70 countries worldwide and affects over 1 billion people every year. The beginning and end date varies from country to another. Let's see. So, on March to November, the daylight savings period in the United States begins each year on the second Sunday in March. When clocks are set forward by 1 hour, they are turned back to a standard time on the first Sunday in November as daylight savings time ends. Not all areas use daylight savings time. The Energy Policy Act of 2005 gives every state or territory the right to opt out of using daylight saving time. In the contiguous U.S., only Arizona currently exercises that right. Clocks in most of the state, including its capital, Phoenix, remains on Mountain Standard Time all year. The only exception is the Navajo Nation in the northern Arizona, which follows daylight saving time to stay in sync with the parts of its territories extended to Utah and New Mexico. Both states observe daylight savings times. Other parts of the U.S. that do not follow daylight savings times are Hawaii and all of the country's external territories such as Puerto Rico, Guam, and U.S. Virgin Islands. In 2006, the state of Indiana, my state, after having abstained from changing its clock since 1970, decided to join the National Daylight Savings Time regime. Now, it does say Indiana started doing that, but not all of Indiana. All right, so the daylight savings time, or where the timeline is between central and eastern, is like over on the border of Indiana. So Illinois is central, where we are eastern. So a lot of the cities over on the western side of Indiana still don't change time because of doing business also with Illinois. So Indiana does do daylight savings time, but a portion of them don't because they are close to that line. But as for that, that's the history of daylight savings time. And I got this information from a website, timeanddate.com. And if you like my content, give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and if you've just found my channel, subscribe. So as for that, I hope to catch you on the next adventure. And remember, adventure is out there.